Great, then we don't have to worry about that. Yes, if you change your mind, Mal back there is going to be taking some photos. Please, both in person and online, be comfortable however you want to be. If you want to sit in a chair, great. If you want to sit on the floor, great. If you need to stand up and walk around a little bit, that's fine. Just be comfortable. Once Dr. Badger has spoken, we're going to have a Q&A. For people in the room, just raise your hand and wait until the microphone has been brought to you in order to ask any questions, just because that's the only way people on Zoom will hear us. For those who are on Zoom, you can either raise your hand on Zoom, and there were instructions online how to do that, but there, there are instructions online how to do that. I don't suddenly offhand can't remember how to do it just looking at the buttons, but either raise your hand and Katie will call on you to unmute yourself and you can ask your question verbally or with sign language, or if you want to type the question in the chat is disabled for the duration of this just to be more accessible for people who use screen readers. But if you want to type a question to Katie, because you don't want to ask out loud, she will be able to read it to the room. If you haven't, especially in person, if you haven't already signed in on the sign-in sheet outside, we encourage you to do so. We're going to be sending a survey out tomorrow. Just be honest, tell us how we did, tell me I'm awesome, because I need that sort of ego stroking. But yeah, there will be a survey going out. Just, please let us know how we did. If you have ideas for things you want to see in the future, especially, that would be fantastic. And then, we are, covered by a 501c3 fiscal sponsor. We run on donations. And so if there are, if anyone wants to donate today to help to keep this running, we do have on our website, I think Katie will put this on the chat, but there's accessmobpittsburgh.org/donate. There's several ways to donate there. If you are here in person, out in the lobby, there are QR codes for doing that. And yeah, so let me be awkward here. I'm so used to licking my finger to change pages. So our speaker tonight is Dr. Josie Badger, who received her bachelor's degree from Geneva College in Disability Law and Advocacy, a master's from the University of Pittsburgh in Rehabilitation Counseling, and a doctorate from Duquesne University in Healthcare Ethics. In 2012, Dr. Badger was crowned Miss Wheelchair America. In 2014, Josie founded J. Badger Consulting, where she provides youth development and disability consulting services. She is the National Transition Director for SPAN Parent Advocacy Network, working with RAISE and National Healthcare Transition Center for Youth with IDD. She is the campaign manager of the United Way of Southwestern PA's I Want to Work campaign to improve the employment of people with disabilities. She's the lead field organizer for the Family Care Act that supports paid family leave and is the program developer of TRAIL, a statewide advocacy group and lobbying training program. She serves as the secretary of the FISA Foundation and is co-chair of the Grants Committee. Josie recently founded Peacock, a nonprofit that will further support the needs of the disability community and diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. With this new initiative, she hopes to be able to support the work of the new Commission on Men's Mental Health. So without further ado, I welcome Dr. Josie Badger.
Thanks, guys. Yes. And I don't know if I'm on, actually. And I don't know where the button is. You're on. Am I on? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Woo! Okay. Oh, testing. Waiting. Cool. Okay. Well, hi guys. Thanks for your grace with me today. Darn Andrew Carnegie for naming like 10 libraries after himself. Um, so really glad to be here today. So I want this to be as much of a dialogue as possible. Um, because you don't need to hear me just sit here and speak about policy, about the disability role in policy. We need to talk as a community. Um, and over the past week, I got home yesterday from Missouri. Uh, I met with individuals, professionals, families, youth with disabilities throughout the country. And what I heard over and over is that yes, politics are a hot mess, but our community is what's important, is what's needed, and is going to be the only thing that actually makes a difference. So what I want to talk a little bit about today is the different methods of advocacy, and we actually have some amazing role models in this room of the different models of advocacy and activism that are really what's making a change in our local communities, our cities, our counties, our state. And so want to hit on those, want to hit on a little bit about how do we connect to the right change makers? Because I feel like so many times we go to the wrong door and want something to change or move, but we're not knocking on the right door. And I want to talk a little bit about if we had a magic wand. Okay, what would we be changing? What would we be doing? And how can we visualize a split political system in a way that we can move those forward? So growing up, I've told most of you guys, I didn't accept my disability. I didn't want to be disabled. I didn't want to be seen as a person with a disability. And I really felt that so much of what I now know as advocacy and activism were just people complaining. I didn't know that there was a way for us to make a difference. And knowing that there is something and ways to make a difference totally changed my perspective, and that's why I am where I am in the work I do. So I started out with advocacy around various topics, but definitely not disability. I went to the Capitol, the US Capitol, to talk about 4-H, which is for rural youth, generally working with agricultural projects. Ours were dogs. Um, but I certainly didn't mention the disability piece. Then slowly the world changes, and I got involved with different advocacy, but I remember going to a nickel conference and doing various marches with nickel. Um, and it takes all types of advocacy and activism. One type you're going to see is the activism that's very visible, that's the signs, the visual representations of the movements, the, being strapped to each other, to buses. And that is an absolute necessary piece of the process. And the other part are the conversations, the relationships, the collaborations with change makers. I was never confident enough to do a lot of the adapt work. And so I found that a lot of my success was in those relationships, trying to figure out where each party comes from and where the movement falls into play. I think we and this is me included, we often villainize people that don't think like us, but we need to figure out why they don't think like us. What is missing? What are we maybe missing? And I'm honestly every 4 years disheartened by some of the continual attacks on every candidate, either side, because we need to be talking about what we can do, what a president can do, not what the other person did wrong. So when I was in Missouri this past week, we definitely had folks on all sides of the spectrum, and some were not even on the spectrum of political feelings. But they all came together because they had the connection of disability. They believed and knew that people with disabilities, at the very core, had the fundamental rights of justice, of a full range of opportunities, of access in all the ways. So, one thing we did during this time was we had them draw up their own countries. They drew their own maps. They drew different flags. They created laws and systems. And even though the beliefs behind them were very, very different that got them to those places, the rules and laws that they developed came out the same. That there should be access to all buildings, transportation, healthcare, that people with disabilities should have the right to choose about their bodies, about relationships, about who they're allowed to love. And they all saw that we, as the disabled community, could make a difference and should
Hello.
be helm. Hello. Helm of making the difference. That is really the piece that's so encouraging. But I think that leads me to some of what I want to share with you guys. So a lot of the individuals from whether it's Trail or SAIL, which is the new piece of Trail, which is the statewide advocates influencing leadership. The new what SAIL is looking at is various pieces of barriers of potential legislation and saying, okay, who is the change maker? Who is the person or people that I need to talk with and create relationships with to get this taken care of? Most of what we're talking about is at state levels, but sometimes we get caught up in, well, this is happening in my school. Should I be going to the principal? Should I be going to superintendent? Or is this a state issue? And so when you're working on identifying who your partners need to be, you need to think about what level of change, where those barriers initiate from. Change makers are the individuals that can influence decisions, whether that be through just their leadership, their connections to others, or through money. Those are change makers. Sometimes they assume the roles in the right way. Sometimes they fall into them. It's also just important to start building that relationship. For folks with disabilities, I can say a lot of what I had to do, and I assume most of you had to do, was to prove your competence. Instead of assuming competence, you had to prove it. And so for us, sometimes that means being able to speak about the larger population. Sometimes it's about data. Sometimes it's about sharing your story with them. Something that I've found extremely helpful in the process has been trying to get to know a little bit about that change maker's background. What are they making decisions based on? What are their core beliefs? what do they feel we as a state or a nation need to as the fix-all? There is no fix-all, but a lot of folks believe that certain affiliations are. And then really figure out if disability has ever played a role in their life. And I can say most of them, it's true, it has, but they have no idea that that person had a disability or that cancer might be considered a disability. And so it's helping them connect their life, their experiences to our life experiences. And sometimes I would say often it's about providing info, connecting, building a relationship before you need something. So going to them, providing info about the disability community or about an issue you're seeing without saying, here's what you need to do for me. It's about education. Um, but, you know, I think some of my most productive relationships that actually created change were based on natural relationships, about asking the former Speaker of the House, the minority leader, to plug me in to the wall because I needed a lecture. And finding out that his parents both had ALS. You know, those little life connections are really what make a difference in the grand scheme of things. So, what I'm kind of hoping to do is, and I know some of you will be like, oh, this is so old school, but I want you to take a few minutes, and you can either do this independently, which I know online is how you'll have to do it, or in a group of just a couple of you, and think of one issue, one, I know it's hard, and how you would like to have it solved. So let's say it can be a county level or a state level, and it's one problem. And what is one thing that a change maker could do, as in writing a bill, passing a bill, supporting a city ordinance that would fix that problem? Okay. And I'm literally going to give you like 2 minutes to then tell me what your thoughts are. I'm not going to make everyone talk, but a couple of you. All right. So, like 2 minutes, you can talk or just think about it. One more minute. And beside me. Yeah. No, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, in 1 minute, I'm gonna have you at least list the issue. Okay, we're gonna bring it back together. I like the conversation. So I want you guys to, and I don't care if you have consensus over a topic because we didn't give you enough time to have a consensus over a barrier, but somebody name um, a, a barrier, throw up your hand that you want to address. If not, I'll call on you.
Well, do we have anyone online who wants to raise their hand
Please
too?
feel free to use the reactions button and the raise hand button. If you're online and have something you would like to share. So while you're sharing your great ideas and putting your hands up online, I'm going to see if anyone in the room has any thoughts.
Oh.
Yeah, Tina.
Oh,
Hold on. Oh,
let me bring you the mic.
Oh, thank you.
I think our group can speak, and we just happen to come together, 3 people that are in the city of Pittsburgh and really involved in issues about physical access. It doesn't mean just for people that have physical disabilities, but the physical access of our city. You know, the curb ramps, the sidewalks, you know, all those kinds of things. So what we chatted about a little bit is, you know, we as members of the disability community see the problem, but how do you get it addressed? Because a lot of times it's concrete, it's asphalt, it's like a major thing. There's got to be a budget. And we talked a bit about, you know, you go through the channels of the department that is involved. And I think the 3 of us have done a lot of that kind of calling and bringing to the attention of the departments that are relevant to the issue. But how do you actually get the change?
Mhm.
It's not necessarily at the level of the department. It's higher up. And how do you get to that higher up level to get that will to make the change on the issues that are brought before them?
Okay, thank you. Any other issues?
We had Bethany over here. Let
Oh,
me just
Bethany.
bring the mic.
Hi, I'm Bethany. In addition to being disabled myself, I'm a doctor for a couple hundred disabled kids, and a lot of them are autistic. There's a program called IBHS. It provides services in home, in the school for kids with mental health diagnoses. I've been told there's a line in a law somewhere that if you have an autism diagnosis, your provider has to be quote unquote autism certified. And so there's different parts of this program, and the autism certified people all seem to end up in one part. So the waiting list for kids in the other part, they're allowed to access it. It's called an individual plan, but de facto they can't access it because none of the autism certified providers are there. So last week I decided to try to find this law, what it actually says, as opposed to somebody telling me it said something, and then see what can be done in an organizational way to get it amended, changed, loophole around it, something so that families who want services and people who want to provide those services aren't stuck behind it. In extreme cases, I've had kids lose their care. They're with a therapist, things are going great, they're making progress, they get an autism diagnosis, and they've lost their care that everybody agreed they were benefiting from because of the supposed line in some supposed law.
Did you find that law?
Just started.
Okay.
It might be Act 62, I'm not sure.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. That's upsetting. Yep. Good. Bad problem. Thank you. Any other?
We have one on Zoom.
Oh, super. Our Zoom friend. I can't see your name, but I think you're out there.
Hi, I am the moderator. My issue would be increasing masking and increasing fully remote jobs.
Truth. Yep. Thank you. Any others? Okay, so Monica first. Hold on.
Let me pull
And
this
then
down so
go
people
to
can
the
hear me.
macro.
Okay. So the problem that I see that we have been working on is that family caregivers, people who are working and say there's an emergency in their family, FMLA is not enough and it does not pay. So we are trying to pass something called the Family Care Act. We have the solution. We have the bill. Now we need to get it through. And that's the difficult part. We were this close. And so I'm just saying it because it's a lot of hard work, but it is worth it. Because if we can get this passed and we can get people to be paid, to be on leave, and also if they're in a dangerous situation where they are being abused or they know someone is being abused and they can give the care for those services. So I've gone through the process with Josie and it's amazing. It really is amazing how it works. And I've learned more about politics than I ever wanted to. So, but
Remind me to pay you later.
okay.
Okay. Yeah. Our back row friends.
Yep. Who wants to speak?
So we had two really good issues. And the one that I think is more interesting to me because it feels less like we're beating our heads against a wall is talking about anti-fat bias in medical education
Okay.
so that people feel like they can get access to all the care and information that they need in order to make informed choices about their health.
Right on. Absolutely. There is a special conference coming up with FISA. If you want to know details, email me. But it's about healthcare access, and some of you were involved in some of that study. We'll talk about it later. Ooh, I have a light now. Okay.
We do have another, we have a hand raised.
Yes. Welcome.
Hey, I'm Amy Shannon, and I have been suffering from not getting good caregivers for like 25 years. And my biggest problem is that I don't feel like caregiving is healthcare or it's not nursing care. And that seems to be what everyone thinks. There's more to caregiving than just nursing and like getting out of bed. I think that caregiving should be categorized as life care, so that encompasses everything that we need. I actually would like to work with people who have like an occupational therapy background more than a nursing background, but I also think that it should just be like a new category that we create, that these are the skills that people need for life care, and they have to get training and things like communication and listening and following directions would be part of it. I just feel like what's available now misses the mark as far as having a full life, including people's appearances and professionalism to be able to go to work. continuity of care, reliability, and relationship. I mean, a lot of caregiving is relationship.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. Like I want to jump into all these issues and no, I can't. But part of that issue right there is the way that our Department of Human Services divided up folks that just quote unquote just needed physical care versus those who have intellectual disabilities and autism. And I actually think it's somewhat connected to what Bethany brought up, because a lot of providers are divided along whether you're on Office of Long-Term Living support, which is usually like an MCO, community health choices, or whether you're on the intellectual disability and developmental disability and autism waivers. And a lot of that comes down to your waiver. I'm gonna try not to jump into that because I can get wild over that, but that's a problem. Rachel, you didn't
hold
you have
on.
your hand up?
I like Donna's idea.
Oh,
Uh,
oh,
Rachel says she supports Donna's idea.
yeah. Okay, okay. So thanks, guys. So, all of these issues come back to a few things. Money, obviously, big problem. And then also awareness that there's a problem, not just on paper, not just somebody saying, oh, I need to cut down, but real living knowledge of why this even matters. The fact that people with disabilities even get out of the house, you know? And if they can't get out of the house, why? Because it's someone else not doing their job to make the ADA truly a part of our society. So I want you to take your idea and then I want you to think through, why is that a problem? Not like, oh, the lack of a curb cut makes me not be able to get the curb, but what is the stem or the root of the issue? Why are curbs still don't have curb cuts? Why are there not ramps? Why are there not enough caregivers / the type of care that we need? Okay, so I want you to take just a couple minutes to think about what is the stem of the issue, because ultimately we're going to talk about next step of what is the recommendation, who does it need to go to, but then we're going to also jump into what Tina said, like, hey, we know the problem, we can give you the data, we've written papers, how do we actually then make the difference? All right, so like 3 minutes. Could I ask something? Is there an ASL on the screen? Because can I either move to them or have them move to me? So they are seeing all that matters. That's up to you. That whole comment about health care, I was saying, I can't take it from nursing. No, I don't care.
because it's considered behavioral, not medical, but then they should have behavioral mental health nurses. Right, they have behavioral technicians for therapy schools, you know, stuff like that. I'm sorry, I thought it's the American Psychiatric guys. We need to like.
One more minute, guys.
I went to some American kind of pediatrics about the applied behavior analysis, and that was what my like key like travel. And we have a little extra.
Well, no, I mean, paid better than what we are now. That's a lot of
Okay, bring it on back. Bring it on back. There's a song.
Okay, everybody, time to bring it on back.
Bring it on back. Okay, so I want to know from you, and I'm just keep me alert if somebody raises their hand on Zoom. But what were some of the sources of the problems that you guys came up with? Yeah, there we go. Run the mic.
The two words that our group came up with, we were focused on infrastructure, but I think this is relevant to so much, is money, lack of,
Lack thereof.
planning, lack thereof.
Okay. Planning, of course. And unfortunately, most of Pittsburgh, older cities, were created without us in mind, before some of the access laws, but even now, even when certain buildings are being updated, unfortunately, our access is not always considered. What else? What? Thank you, Elisa, for running the mic.
Okay. I was just trying to pussyfoot around it and say, oh, it's the way society is. It comes down to ableism.
Mm.
I mean, that's what it comes down to, is that people are afraid that they are going to become us, which then they forget that they can, or that they just don't think about disability until it's in their families. My, working with different people who work with disabled people, and especially politicians, it's those politicians that have a disabled family member that actually do something about it, because the rest of them don't get it. So, I mean, it really is, it's ableism.
Okay, I actually see Rachel's hand this time.
I'm departing a little bit from my group. I'm going rogue here. So one of the things that I think is an issue, and in academia, is education. And the fact that our education system is very biased on like whose history we learn about and whose rights should we care about. And in my class, I will, teach about certain issues and historical moments, laws that are laid out there. And my students will be like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I should have known that. And I didn't know that. And it's like, yeah, because somebody decided that wasn't important for you to learn. This isn't about you missing something. It's about a curriculum that's been built that leaves a group of people out. So I think a big problem is, looking at the experiences of marginalized groups, across communities, is that we have such a deficit with our educational system.
Mm-hmm.
And capitalism. Money's a disease.
Was there anything else? Uh-oh, I didn't know.
Ah,
I was part of this.
so I'm gonna play devil's advocate, and I wasn't a part of this, but here I am. So I think one of the biggest problems that we face is individuals trying to make these changes. We don't see the changes being made, and we get discouraged, and we just get angry, and then we just stop. And I think one of the things that we could do is put it in terms that they can understand and kind of dumb it down and say, oh, well, curb cuts are good for strollers too. You know, you play devil's advocate and you're like, if you're not going to do it for me, let me see if I can reverse psychology you into doing it for someone else. Meanwhile, it is for me.
Good answer, Mike. For those
So-
that don't know, that's my husband.
Okay. On the Zoom, we have Amy Shannon.
Hi, Amy.
I really think that it's the way people think. I was injured at 12 years old, and now after being paralyzed for 35 years, I've learned to think completely differently than people in my family. And we just had an argument about something stupid over dinner because I need a lot more communication than they do because they're able to get up and do things. And so, you know, I think people get stuck in their ways and it's hard for them to change. There's ignorance and fear. And, you know, it's a lot of it is an emotional thing that people just want to be in denial of the fact that disability is part of the human experience.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate that. I think a lot of us feel your sentiments. Anyone else want to share? Oh, thank you.
Oh, yeah, Tavion?
You appear to be muted.
Tavion, if you're speaking, you're still muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep,
Yes,
there you
now
are.
we can hear you.
Okay. Great evening to you all. Appreciate you all having me. Uh, I'm coming here on two folds. I want to learn a lot more because, as a lot of you said, I'm not disabled, and I have uh, a family member or two that is coming into this the ballpark of being needing accessible like wheelchairs, scooters, and things like that. But secondly, is because I've worked with and I'm on the member of Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh Transit.
Mhm.
So we deal with the funding aspect that a lot of you all mentioned, the educational aspect, the funding aspect. And I agree with all that. But with me having a stint with working with Access and having to drive you all to your dialysis appointments, different appointments that we were late getting to you for, it was a funding issue. One, we had Access that's under PRT, uh, governed contract under PRT that's going First Transit, I believe it was. So Access was servicing 200 to 300 of you guys. And when they took on First Transit, they went up to 900 to 1,000 calls a day. So I don't think they had the manpower and they didn't hire and think ahead of the game. I understand on the business side of it that it was an opportunity for them, but I disagree to take on something that didn't have the manpower for. They maybe should have gave it to somebody else that did. Maybe so now we were picking up patients that on our logs we were on time, but we weren't on time. You know what I mean? So we got an air full. So if we had dialysis patients that had an hour long appointment, if we're late, they only get a half of their appointment. And that sucks because it drains the energy out of you guys, right? Those of you all dealing with it. So I think you all hit it on the head. The accessibility to the facilities, educating folks like myself, because before I did that job, I didn't know the eminent and the significance of the things that folks that are accessible, the things that you all need from a day-to-day aspect, as well as coming into my grandmother being 90 years old and having some limitations with her mobility and having to go after a job because we don't believe in nursing homes, me and my family, but also having older folks in the family that struggle and can't lift grandma up. So folks like myself and others. But you know how family can get. Some will be willing, some won't, right? So, I mean, I understand, but I agree with all you guys. Funding, accessibility, that ableism was a big one for me. I agree 200% with that. And everything you guys said, especially the education portion, a lot of us don't know what you deal with. And that's why I tried to share this event right here, even though I'm not accessible, because I'm starting to learn over the last few years of what you all really face. And I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much for joining. There's not enough of you joining this type of stuff. So props. And you just reiterated, and you said this, but the issue of planning ahead, taking on a bunch of new clients without having the resources, supports plan in advance. The money that you just reiterated. I'm really glad you're here with us.
We have one more Zoom comment if you have a moment. Paul?
Hi, yeah, hey, Josie, glad to be part of this. I think, well, somebody said there've been so many people saying so many interesting things since I raised my hand that I forget what I'm sort of saying in response to tell you the truth. But, what somebody said something that triggered for me. So there's this phrase that, about a canary in the coal mine, and basically that's sort of based on history where canaries were brought into coal mines because they were more susceptible to bad air or poisonous gas. And so if the canary died, you knew as a miner to, get the hell out of there. I think that people with disabilities have the social role of being the canary in the coal mine. That things will go wrong for us first, and so that then triggers for me. Then our objective is that we need to organize ourselves to be a respected part of society, of human society. We're the canary in the coal mine, and if people don't listen to us, they're gonna, be impacted too. And so, those are just two random thoughts.
No, it's so true, Paul. And Paul, it's so good to hear your voice.
Yeah,
So just, and this is quick side story. We were in Missouri this past week, set it up. I was running it, had disabled youth come in from all over the country, and we picked this hotel because they had an accessible shuttle. Get there, I'm first one there, and we go to the hotel shuttle stop at the airport. We wait and we wait, and then we call the hotel, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's coming." It didn't come. 3 hours later, we find out that that shuttle that was accessible had not had like updated plates since 2023. And no one knew. And so, I mean, so yes, we were the canary. I was glad we were there before our youth were, but yep. Yeah, I was the poor bird there. So thank you. Okay, so what I want to pivot to is I want to go back to these main issues, and when they don't hear us, what can we do to help them hear us? What do we need to do to get them to not be able to ignore us, to be able to see the importance, even if they do not have a disability, or they do not have personal experience with a person with a disability. So what are the things we need to do? I'm going to go back to Monica mentioning the Family Care Act, because it's been a real thorn in our side, because paid family and medical leave is the right thing. Everybody who works is going to likely have a medical emergency, either themselves or a family member that they have to take time off for. Everyone could benefit from this bill, and yet we've done phone calls, we've done emails, we've done videos, etc. And everyone believes it's important, and it still sits in the House. And so I want to take a step back to disability in general, whether it is issues with basic access. Then I believe some of ableism can be found in the lack of information and ignorance, not all of it. What are ways that you have seen or that you can think of to help change makers hear our voice? And whether it's newspapers, I just want to know, what have you guys seen, done, or do you think would help them to hear us? Yeah.
So for me personally, I am a huge fan of a loud, angry protest. And so, I've been arrested 7 times now fighting for disability rights, especially like when the Affordable Care Act was challenged, we took over Senator Rob Portman's office in Ohio because he was one of the main people who was really stuck on voting, no, we don't need the Affordable Care Act anymore. And we took over his office building in Columbus, and we made national news with that protest. And throughout that summer, the organization that I'm part of, which is called ADAPT, we kind of called that the Summer of ADAPT because it was largely credited to the protests of disabled people, both in the capital in DC and then throughout the country. We were largely credited with saving the Affordable Care Act through our loud, rah, rah.
No, thank you. And that's a huge piece. Don't turn it back on me. I don't want to make people sick.
We do
So,
have a
okay.
hand raised as
Yeah.
well.
Oh,
Thank
yes.
you. Who's up
Tavion,
next?
go ahead, please.
Yes, please.
You are muted if you are trying to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I second what the young lady that just mentioned said. I was a part of, again, the organization. I would suggest and encourage you guys to look into Pittsburgh for Pittsburgh Transit. They're dealing with a lot of issues on the transit side that you all are mentioning. And there is an event coming up on August 14th that they're having an annual cookout, free food, free things up in Mount Washington, and I believe what is that, Olympia Park or whatnot. I would encourage you guys to come out, have community with us. And but to get back to the point in the question is us in Pittsburgh for Transit went up to Harrisburg and did something similar as the young lady. And we went to go advocate for the funding for transit for accessible riders and just riders in general. And that organization is made up of bus operators, accessible riders, regular civilian riders, and I believe it's somebody on PRT's executive board or whatnot. And we all come together and try to create policy and or ideas. Things like, for example, they do bus shelter audits or whatnot. Where do we need bus shelters? In what communities? Sidewalks, accessible sidewalks, things that you all mentioned on this call today. And also, what we can do, young lady said before, is I think all these community events we had throughout the summer and things like that, we need to create a coalition and or an alliance with folks like myself, folks like you guys know, whether it's your church, synagogue, mosque, whatever you do, as well as the community. I'm also a part of Whitehall Democratic Committee or whatnot. We have a community day, and you all can come out as well. Anything, if you all live out where I live at, please feel free to come to the council meetings. Go to your local community council meetings. Make your voices heard. Show up. Ours is every other Wednesday or whatnot. We have social media groups, kind of similar to what we're doing right now, where we can post things that are happening. And your churches, mosques, synagogue, I'm sure they got still the bulletin boards. You know what I mean? Post some of this information, bring it to a leader within those organizations' attention until get on their nerves. Like the other young lady said earlier, get on their nerves until they get tired of you asking. Yeah. I mean, I'll end there. I could get long winded, but thanks thank you again for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Tavion, I love you calling me young lady
was
because I'm
literally
pretty
just gonna
sure I'm
say-
older than you. Okay,
No problem.
Monica, in 1 second, we have Amy Shannon raised her hand first on the Zoom, and then we'll do Monica.
Posting on Facebook, and I'm trying to use humor and relatability just to talk to the general public, because I posted recently that my new caregiver saw me naked before I learned what her last name is, and then said, shouldn't that deserve like dinner first? So like a lot of people responded because it was funny, but they could relate to it because it seemed so normal. I also tried to compare having a relationship with a caregiver to being married. And then, said, that's why men spend so much time in the bathroom. They get some privacy there. And so I wonder if that would relate to, the lawmakers too, to try and use humor and relate to things that they can relate to, like marriage.
Amy, that's excellent. And I agree 100%. When I go in to a legislator's office, I try to get that barrier down, whether it be commenting on, oh, you did a really great job with this bill, or thank you for supporting it, or making a joke. Something that will help take them down a notch, and put them on the same level. And humor is actually like a really efficient and effective tool for that. Yeah, thank you. And Monica?
I think one of the most important things is to tell our stories, and to tell our stories to legislators, and tell them in such a way that they sit there and they go, oh my God, I never thought of that. And to keep telling our stories over and over, and have enough of us doing it so that they don't think that it's a one-off. It's just this person's problem, that it is a major problem for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I believe we need to do is, as a community, we need to pull together. We are so siloed with what we're looking at and how we're looking at it. And what it comes down to is the government has us all fighting over crumbs. And we're all kind of not fighting, but, I need this money for spina bifida. This money needs to go to cerebral palsy. This money needs to go for people with ID. We need to pull together and say, this is what we need as a community. And you need to look at us as a community, not just the special interest groups.
Preach. Yep, absolutely. We are so siloed, whether it be in disability, whether it be in various vulnerability groups.
Your donation will help us. Your donation will help us to open more field offices, to get more organizers on the ground. It will help us. So let's get to work.
What?
I sound like Kamala, obviously. Yeah, donations help a lot, obviously.
Just
Okay.
as a 501c3, we are not endorsing any candidates here. That was a random fluke. Please, we are not endorsing any candidates here.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah. Oh, please.
Okay, we have one more online.
Hi, it's the host again. Your friendly neighborhood ghost here. I was thinking about different ways that I've interacted with lawmakers and what has been successful and not successful. The most concrete unsuccessful one that I can bring attention to is there is a local lawmaker who hosts a disability access summit every year. And the Disability Access Summit for the past several years has not required masks, has not had increased filtration, has not considered that. And when I call to ask about this or ask how they're going to include people who are immunocompromised, they say, we don't know. And then we'll get back and never get back to me or do anything about it. On the opposite side, there was a recent petition to the FDA advocating for continuing wide access to COVID vaccines that made a difference. When you watch the recordings and read the transcripts of that event, they say we didn't realize how many people felt so strongly about this and how many people it affected. I was not going to vote to have universal access to these vaccines, but now I am. And then the third one, which is kind of funny, I don't know how well people know the back way out of the waterfront in Homestead. There is a road that had train tracks crossing it that went to nothing. And they were so poorly maintained that they blew 2 tires on our car. I've seen other cars that were just unable to traverse it. And I wound up calling my rep Summer Lee and saying, if you guys don't get this fixed soon, I'm gonna make it worse because there's a Lowe's down the road and I'm gonna rent a truck and fill it with gravel and dump it in the middle of the road, and it's gonna be harder to pave. After about a week of saying, I could just go get that truck, they got the spur fixed and paved over faster than anyone said it could be.
That's cool. Thank you. Thank you for adding that. And I think that actually comes back to Mike's thought, like, how can we expand what we are needing for our day-to-day survival and life? How can we expand it and demonstrate a need for various other things, whether it be Lowe's, which is a big tax paying entity, to strollers, to whatever else. I look at Tina and thinking about using media, using the newspapers. I would say legislators and various change makers are some of the most active newspaper readers that are out there. And Twitter, they are still reading, tweeting, watching. It's X, I know. Xing out there. And so figure out the means of communications of those change makers that you need to get a hold of. And Rachel, I was thinking about the education. Some of that, yes, there are some pilot projects and legislation around increasing disability education. But could we be going directly to the companies that are developing curriculum, developing books, if that's even a thing anymore? I guess probably online books. What can we be doing in different ways to achieve the same outcome? Is something like finding a construction company that is supportive of disability rights, that might be willing to do some support in curb cuts for a better price, and then doing GoFundMe's. Is that something that's possible? Are there multiple ways to address the issue? And sometimes that's what it takes, is figuring it out piece by piece, even if it's not the best answer. Sometimes it takes just chipping away at it. So it is 7:21, and obviously I gypped you guys by going to the wrong library. So I am around, but I wanted to kind of open this up for general questions, whether it be about direct legislation like the bills I've worked on, which I didn't even tell you guys about, to SAIL, which is the advocacy group that I work with. Do you guys have any questions? I will tell you about SAIL because I know that's in your minds that was something you really wanted to know. So SAIL is a project that was originally started for the Family Care Act, paid family and medical leave, but it is doing that still and expanding. So there have been over 100 graduates of the program from across Pennsylvania, and then we've had a few folks from out of state. And we work with advocates with disabilities to be able to work with change makers. A lot of legislation, but we, also can work with other groups as well. But we also recognize the time and the lack of resources that folks with disabilities have in doing this work. So We try to stipend for all the work, reaching out to legislators, all of that. We try to build connections between legislators and advocates. And my dream is that we have at least two change makers. Well, I think they're change makers, but advocates with disabilities in each district in Pennsylvania that can go and talk to their rep or their senator about issues that a senator or representative is willing to call and say, hey, we're looking at this bill. What does this mean? What does this look like? And that's my dream. If you're interested in sale, let me know. And we can put my email in the chat box. Is someone able to type it? So my email is Josie, Josie, at J Badger, Badger, consulting. I know this is long. Consulting, inc.org. Josie at jbadgerconsultinginc.org.
We have a question in the audience.
And I would love a question from the audience.
Hi, Josie. How you doing?
Joe.
Hey, it's an interesting dynamic. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of voting? And the other thing of it is, and we had that thing about Kamala Harris. Sorry about that. I had nothing to do with that. Anyways, getting active in campaigns. In other words, just not talking about it. In other words, politics is involved in everything.
Yeah.
And so that if you get somebody who really supports disability issues, get involved in their campaign, get them elected, especially if they're a woman, right?
Right.
Just thought I'd throw that out.
So vote. Yes, vote. Please vote. I really believe that Justin's Dart's quote that vote as if your life depends on it, because it does, really rings true. And I'm not going to say how to vote, but I'm going to say pay attention. There's a lot of things happening. You need to be reading. You need to be looking at the various surveys that are going out to candidates for this year. You're voting on your representatives. You're voting on, obviously, the president. You're voting, some of you, half are voting on Senate. And so pay attention. And as John mentioned, if you feel called and compelled to work on a campaign, do it. That is one direct way to not only potentially get the person you support into office, but it can build that relationship so that if they are sworn into office, you can go to them about disability issues, educate them, provide insights. And that's a really great way to go about it.
Well, this is a great segue moment to just quickly plug that our next community lecture night on September 30th from 6 to 7:30, Paul O'Hanlon and Mallory Hudson will be doing a talk on if people with disabilities are the largest minority group in American politics, why isn't anyone trying to get my vote? So just a quick plug that is a great thing to come to next month.
Absolutely agree.
I wanted to get that in there because I knew Paul O'Hanlon always talks about voting, so I figured I'd get that voting thing in there. So
Good plug.
Hold on.
Wait.
Josie, can you just tell people what we did for the governor's, the governor's race? What Trail did?
Oh, sure.
Because that was awesome.
It was pretty darn cool. So Trail, which is now Sail, we had an awesome response. So we are literally a group of folks with disabilities from all over the state. And so we connected last round with all of the individuals that were running for governor. I think we got feedback from all the Republican candidates and Governor Shapiro filling out surveys. And they also got on they were just calls to share their beliefs about various disability related issues. But I think what was a really cool part of that is they, of course, wanted to be seen. They wanted their voice to be heard by folks with disabilities. But we shared information directly to them about issues facing the disability community, so that before they jumped on these calls, these virtual town halls, they were able to read about some of the barriers we face and have a little more information and understanding before talking to us. And so we gave them the questions. They were able to prepare. Some of them obviously didn't, some obviously did not. But it gave us all a chance to get them know them more. And since then, Governor Shapiro's team has stayed in contact with us. We were able to go to the inauguration. We still have direct contact with the governor's office, and it's because we developed those relationships early on, provided info, and now we continue to be a sounding board. And this fall, we will be hosting very similar events for the various House seats that are up for re-election or election. And so if you want more information about those, we're going to be sharing it through Rev Up. But also I'd be happy to share that info with you as well.
Well, we have time for one more comment. Paul O'Hanlon, were you starting to say something?
I had this thought that perhaps one of the things that we should do as a local disability community, and maybe I should be saving this for my talk a little bit later, but we have such great legislators all of a sudden from Allegheny County with disabilities, or like Dan Miller and Abigail Salisbury and Jessica Bentham, and I think that we should sort of organize a meeting with our local delegation that are either people with disabilities or committed to disability issues, and kind of, it would be both challenging for us as a kind of community to come up with, well, what's our agenda? Like what would we really want them to promote? And how can we support them? So just as a suggestion.
Absolutely. And I think that if there are folks in this area that would like to join forces, we are looking at doing a regional town hall with folks running for office, primarily senators and representatives. But if you guys wanted to turn it to a hybrid, we could consider that as well. Anyone else?
I think that might be all we have time for.
Thank
So
you.
I'm gonna come up and once again, thank you so much, Dr. Josie Badger, for being here. Applause from everyone. I'm gonna put in a quick plug. Obviously, I already put in a plug for next month's lecture night. August 24th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Shenley Quad. We are going to be celebrating Disability Pride. If you go on our website, accessmobpittsburgh.org, under current events, if you do the drop-down menu there, you can find more information about it. But it's going to be a day of celebrating disability. Okay, we have stuff up on the screen now too, so you've got our events coming up. It's a fun day of the disability community coming together and just being loud and proud and so happy. A lot of great resources. I think Dr. Josie Badger is
I'll be
our
back.
keynote speaker. And that is at the Oakland Library, so you know how to find it now. Oh, I'm
Good to
sorry.
know I practice.
Yeah, you got good practice in. If anyone has questions for us, you can find us at accessmobpittsburgh@gmail.com. If you go to our website, there's ways to sign up for our mailing list. Anyone here in person tonight, if you didn't sign in on the sheets there, please be sure to do so. We'll be sending out that survey tomorrow. please fill it out. You know, we'd love to get your input. Thanks again to Clean Air Pittsburgh for bringing the air filtration system. Definitely thank you again to Disability Pride PA for being our fiscal sponsor, and thank you to the Three Rivers Community Foundation for making today possible. Yeah, I love you guys. This was fun. I'm
Thank
so
you, guys.
excited for next time.
Thank you.
High five. Good. That works. That was awesome.